Hi there, welcome to Homekeepers. Come right on in, my friends. So glad to be with you today. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. Besides whatever's going on, Scripture says this is the day the Lord has made. So we know who made it. So whatever happens, it could turn out really good. And we're always glad. I like to welcome the brand new viewers. You know, so when you're channel surfing, sometimes you discover a program you've never seen before. And so if that's who you are, we want to welcome you and hope it won't be your last time to visit us. If you'll stay tuned today, I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Erin Porter. And she's written, in my estimation, a one-of-a-kind book. It's called Eat, Pray, and Get Well. And it's just so interesting. She tells her life, you know, as a very young child and some of the chaos and difficulties she had. And then she has a few recipes. And then we go to another part and then a few more recipes. So it's got a lot of inspiration in it, a lot of good advice, but also some wonderful recipes. It is a beautiful book. And I don't know about you, but isn't it kind of fun to just sit and go through a recipe book? Some of them are so beautiful. The way they've done the photography on the food and so forth, you'll find that in this book. And so we're going to talk about it with her, not just the food, but her own journey from a lot of difficulty to a lot of illness, taking a lot of different medicines to a completely whole person. And when you see her, you'll know it works. She's a very beautiful lady, looks very healthy. And I'm going to join Stephanie, and we've been on the air about 20 years and never done a meatloaf. We've done about 3,500 recipes, never done a meatloaf. And that's a very controversial dish, you'll have to admit. My dad didn't like it. My kids didn't like it. I like it if it's a good one. And this one's called Mom's Meatloaf. And when I saw that, I thought, well, it has to be good if it came out of Mom's kitchen. So Stephanie and I will put that together, and we'll make a judgment on it. And you know, when we taste something, especially Stephanie, if she doesn't like it, you'll know it. There's no pretense on our recipes. But I've been offering you the Daniel Plan. And this is by Rick Warren. It is just recommended by Dr. Oz and some other great doctors and theologians you know. And if you know your Bible, you know where the Daniel Plan comes from. And it had to do with diet and a lot of other things. And Rick Warren took this, and it's been on the New York Times bestseller list in the past. So the information, if you want to get this, coming up on your screen. It's for a gift of $23 to the program. And you can write us, do the snail mail like I do, Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida. And you can do it with a credit card, debit card, which Stephanie does, 1-800-229-0059. And we'll get it out to you. How are you, my dear?
Doing well. How are you?
Do you ever make meatloaf at home?
I make it all the time, but I'm excited about this one because of the V8. I'm very interested to see how it tastes.
It's got V8 juice, like you know you buy.
Because I'm working on an eat-at-home challenge right now to save money. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we only get something to go to eat every 2 weeks, one night.
So
and everything else
is. Where do you go?
Well, I mean, like just something simple. That's our one night eating out, though. Mm-hmm. But I go and get it. We don't even go out and get it. So it's a whole saving money, eat-at-home challenge. So I'm working on my flavors at home. I'm working on spices and stuff like that to make things more exciting because you have those few dishes that you make all the time, and I want to amp them up a little bit. So I'm excited to see how this works out.
And you are very, very good at that. And you know when somebody gets in a financial difficulty and they go to an advisor, the first thing they say is quit paying for your lunch.
Let me tell you.
Take your lunch to work. That's what they say.
And eat at home. We went out to eat for our anniversary this last weekend, 24 years married, but I had a gift card or I wouldn't have gone.
Even for your anniversary?
Even for because it's so.
Call me up. I'll loan you the money.
Expensive. It's just ridiculous.
You're
I
a
can make
kid.
a nice meal at home.
Well,
but anyway, so
yes.
yeah, eat at home challenge. That's what I'm doing.
Yes,
amping up spices.
And it's very true.
Yeah.
Back to the financial advisor that says take your lunch to work. He says they spend about $50 a week, the average, on lunch. That's $200 a month.
$200 a month. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
When you could buy a little bit of meat and some bread and fix a sandwich.
I think back to when we were in our deep financial, in our heads in the ground, you know, and my husband would spend $10 to $12 a day on lunch. That's insanity. Now we pack our lunches.
Absolutely, I do.
Okay,
I'm cheapy.
I'm going to put everything in the bowl, then I'm going to put the meat in, and we're going to mix it up. Super simple, okay? So I have
And this is one where I just stand and look gorgeous?
Yes, please stand there and look pretty. I have a can of V8 juice. This is what I'm so excited about. I think this is going to add a flavor like we've never tasted before. I've never tasted it.
Yes, and if they're going to
meatloaf.
call it Mom's Meatloaf, it better be good.
It better be good. I have 1 egg beaten. I have onion soup mix, the dry onion soup mix.
When we used to have telethons, this girl was in charge of feeding everybody. I always look forward to the night we got Cracker Barrel.
A 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese.
Cracker Barrel does a
That was
good
everyone's favorite night. We got chicken and dumplings. We got meatloaf. We got mashed potatoes. And that was our carb fest night. I try to do that towards the end of the week when we all needed just some comfort.
Well, it's called it's called comfort food. Yes.
Yes. So let's see, the breadcrumbs, a 1/2 cup. I have some garlic powder. I'm going to mix this all up, then I'm going to put the meat in.
Well, it's got to have a lot of flavor.
So this is going to have so much flavor. Those are seasoned breadcrumbs too, so you're really
With
adding with this onion soup mix and the V8. I mean, the V8 has flavor that like a tomato, just a tomato sauce wouldn't.
And it's so wet.
Yeah, so you mix this all together. You put it in a loaf pan. This is 1.5 pounds of beef.
I'm not a meatloaf expert, but I would say this is one of the easier ones.
Yeah, so I'm going to mix this up.
You didn't have to cut
I used my
onions
hands
and get your
Right.
eyes all...
Right. So we have a loaf pan, okay? You're going to bake it for 30 minutes at 350. You're going to bring it out. You're going to put a little ketchup on top, and you're going to bake it for another 10 minutes.
Let me tell you, I don't have the amount here, but the best thing to put on a meatloaf, I should have thought of this earlier, my sister gave me, it's a ketchup, mustard, and a little bit of brown sugar. And
yes.
It's perfect. Probably better than this one, I would guess.
Well, that just adds another layer of flavor, the brown sugar and the mustard for sure.
And we have a finished one here.
Yeah, so I'm just getting this all mixed up. Going to put it in the loaf pan. It's a beauty. Look at that. I can't wait to taste it.
And I told the people that if you don't like it, we'll know it.
I heard you. This face does not lie.
I had a viewer say, quit licking your fingers.
It's Arthelene Rippy's show, and she can lick her fingers if she wants to.
It's not only
Those
that,
are the
all of you
rules
out there
around
who
here.
don't lick your fingers in your own kitchen, raise your hand.
Yeah, these are the rules. Arthelene Rippy's show. She gets to do what she wants.
Okay, here you go.
Okay.
Well,
It smells so good.
it smells
And look,
wonderful.
it's a beautiful consistency.
It is.
Oh, that is flavorful.
It's a perfect consistency. Because you don't like them kind of hard, you know what I mean? You like them a little soft.
That flavor is so good. It's really moist.
It's really weird.
Oh, it's so good.
It's weird because
So
it's got
many
V8
adjectives
juice
for you
in it,
today.
and boy, that onion soup saves you from chopping up stuff.
Yep, so
and
good.
and the seasonings in it. So,
This is a good one.
okay, it's called Mom's Meatloaf if you want it. It's free. Just email us. That's the best way, but all the other ways are coming up on the screen. And after that, you're going to meet Erin Porter, and you're going to love her. So stay with us.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, you may receive it by contacting us through social media as listed on the screen. When requesting a copy through the mail, be sure to include a self-addressed stamped envelope. Thank you, and please know we always appreciate hearing from our viewers.
Welcome, Erin Porter. So glad to meet you.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
When I got this book, I was so impressed, and I made a very feeble effort at the top of the show to try to describe it. How would you describe your book?
I like to say this is not your grandmother's cookbook, only because there's some raw things about my childhood and about the decades of illness that I had, all combined with, I have 60 gluten-free, sugar-free recipes and a lot of inspiration. So I wanted it to be a journey of the tough things that I went through, childhood, illness, but also my journey with God along the way. And I wanted it to be hope. I wanted that book to represent hope for all those people that are out there in pain, whether it be physical, mental, it covers everything.
And it's titled Eat, Pray, Get Well. And those are very necessary ingredients, I think, to get well, because praying is going to certainly help your emotional state, your mental state, your spiritual state, and eating the right food also.
Right.
So, have you ever made a meatloaf?
I have.
Okay.
Yes.
We just taught you how.
We do like meatloaf at home.
Okay. I was fascinated by your story that even as a toddler, you were afraid of your dad.
Yes, I tell a story in the book. My mom told me this about a year or two ago, and to me it was a great insight. And I was about 6 years old, just learning how to crawl. We lived in the Bronx. We had a tiny little apartment, and my dad had a habit of taking a nap just on his back, spread out on the living room floor. And I would crawl as close as I could to the walls, staring at him the whole time, making sure I don't get too close. You know, I knew at 6 months old, this is somebody to be feared. This is somebody you stay away from. And I said, what an insight into the damage that can be done to us while we're still in the crib.
Yes, and you don't even know what it was that damaged you.
Right, exactly.
You don't have any
It's
memory.
forming before the brain can even really understand what's happening.
There was that fear through most of your life, right? As long as you were at home.
Yes. He was a very angry, bitter, didn't really speak to us unless it was to humiliate or demean. So we were very skittish children. It was not a happy home. It was not a home full of joy. There was not another side to him, you know, that was sometimes loving or...
He was very consistently
full of rejection too. So if he came home from work, there was no eye contact, there was no hello. And that made me feel like I was invisible and made me want to be invisible. And I carried that into my 20s. And so there was a lot of healing that I had to do physically, spiritually, emotionally. And God did that.
And also, he made you work very hard.
Yes.
As a little girl, you had a sister.
Right.
And today we would call it child abuse, and a neighbor would call today. A neighbor would call Child Protective Services.
Right. I think back then, in those days, people didn't really want to get involved, and we did have neighbors questioning. We had teachers questioning what was happening at home, but nobody ever picked up the phone. And I don't think back in those days that was really something that happened too often. Today would be different, like you said.
That's the exact truth. My husband was a pastor, and there were situations we heard about from kids that maybe came on the bus, and the policeman would say, there's nothing you can do as long as it's, quote, in the family. So thank God that's
changed.
kind of been bunked.
Right, that's definitely changed.
I'm sure this contributed to your physical lack of health, I would say. We maybe forget that we are body, soul, and spirit. And when one of them is not working right, it usually affects the others.
Yes. I always say it's like a tripod. If one of those pieces is not in working order, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so when I set out to write this book, it was going to be strictly recipes. And God had a completely different plan. And all of a sudden I started adding, it came to me, it has to be emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. And I felt like God was with me the whole way writing that book. And before I knew it, I was writing about my childhood and my illness. And it was no longer a fluffy, light recipe book. And it became something wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The name of the book is Eat, Pray, and Get Well, and we're going to get that website up. You can go there and get it. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon.
You can, not yet. You can buy it on
because it's quite new.
eatpraygetwell.com.
Okay.
And then if you happen to be in the Tampa International Airport, they have it in all their Newslink stores. But the website is the best place right now to get it.
Yes, and that's on your screen right now. How old were you when you left home?
18.
So you did finish high school at home?
I finished high school. I did a couple months of college, and I talk about in the book, I was so broken by the time I got to college that I did not know who I was. I was so shy that it was almost impossible to make friends at that point. And I ended up quitting school, coming home, and my mother said, "You're getting on a bus to Manhattan. You know, if you're not going to go to college, you're going to work in the city." And that's what I did. I ended up working in the city.
Did your dad ever change?
No. No.
It's a sad story.
And he's still alive, and I pray for him. I don't have any anger or bitterness now. It took a long time to get to that place. But I wish him, now I see him in a different light, and I pray for him, and I feel sorry for him. He missed out on a life. He didn't get to, he carried around, he had a difficult childhood. And so I have a little bit of understanding now that hurt people hurt people.
It's true. So describe your illnesses, and at what age were you really, you're dealing with a lot of sinus infections, and of course we get prescriptions all the time.
Yes.
We are one drugged up nation, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I have never walked into a doctor's office where they sit me down and tell me what to eat. That's never happened.
Yeah.
It's always been scripts. And I started getting sick at the age 6. We moved out of the Bronx into a house about
Did you say 6?
6 years old. Just asthma, allergies, the normal, a lot of kids have it. And we didn't at the time realize, we knew the house smelled like mold. We would joke about it, and I would have to wait decades before I found out what was making me sick.
It's very dangerous.
Yes. So I later moved into an apartment when I started working in Manhattan. I moved down there into a cheap apartment, had visible mold. It took me down within 9 months. I was very ill, and I was 18 and a half, 19, and I started with a sinus infection and went to the best of the best ENTs in Manhattan, and all they had for me was antibiotics. I stayed on antibiotics, well, the next 15, 20 years, almost nonstop.
Oh, my word.
Four sinus
I'm
surgeries.
surprised you're sitting there.
4 sinus surgeries, and they had nothing to offer me outside of the antibiotics and surgery. Well, after years of taking the antibiotics, I was about 19, 20. I remember, I talk about it in the book, I was standing at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and I didn't think I could even stand. I had no energy. I couldn't speak. So here comes fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and the heart arrhythmias. So I spent 19, 20 running around to cardiologists on my lunch break, to rheumatologists, everything,
really
every
sick.
part of my body. I had nerve pain. I had reflux. I couldn't keep any food down. So, of course, this was back in the early 90s, and I didn't realize the damage the antibiotics were doing. And they just kept coming, and they became as normal as brushing my teeth, because the infection would go away. Well, I was on them. The minute I came off, it was back. So I just kept taking them. So it set me on a spiral of downward health, and for the next 10, 15 years, I was in search of my cause.
Yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of our viewers are thinking, that's me. There's a lot of sinus infections,
yes.
There's a lot of chronic fatigue.
And it all goes together. And people contact me on my blog, and they say, I also have, I've had 3, 4 surgeries, and I have reflux, and I have leaky gut. Everybody seems to have the same symptoms. And what I found out was antibiotics actually fuel fungal infections. So because of living in that apartment, they found aspergillomas in my sinuses, which is a deadly fungus. It comes from aspergillus, which is actually a category 1 cancer-forming substance. So this is what I had living here, for a decade. And I found a great ear, nose, and throat. And he said, you have a severe fungal infection on top of Pseudomonas and staph, which is bacteria that are very hard to get rid of. So once I heard that word fungal infection, I started learning everything I could about fungus. Not a nice topic to talk about, but
no, it doesn't give you real good pictures. But before we go on, because we got know how you got well and how you met the Lord and changed everything, but address leaky gut just a little bit, because you're hearing more and more about that. Sometimes PBS has some really good stuff, and this gal was on there talking about leaky gut one day, and I'd never really heard about it. Now I hear about it more and more. So tell them exactly what it is and what can we do about it.
So our intestines are actually sealed off so that toxins cannot get in or out. There's a barrier. When you have leaky gut and things like antibiotics, too much alcohol, the standard American diet with too much sugar, all of a sudden you start getting gaps and holes. So all of a sudden gluten, you weren't allergic to gluten before, but now you eat it and the gluten is coming out and into your bloodstream as well as other toxins. And all of a sudden you have an autoimmune disease. So now they're starting to have a link between Hashimoto's, sinus infections, you name it, chronic fatigue. Heal your gut and you would be amazed at the things that just go away.
And what heals your gut? Changing your eating habits?
You have to, yes, changing your eating habits and repairing it. And things that repair it are colostrum, L-glutamine, bone broth. So you work on sealing and healing. And then eating right and getting a lot of the grains and the sugars out of our diet.
We're hearing so much about bone broth. I heard
bone broth is so fantastic.
And it's best if you boil your own chicken, right? And
you can. They sell it now where you can avoid doing all that and smelling up your house for the next 48 hours, because that's what happens.
Okay, now, did you meet the Lord first, or did you get some more education on what you should eat and what you should maybe quit taking so much medication and all? Which came first?
Well, I grew up Catholic and Christian. So I always believed in God, but never had that personal relationship. That was not something that was talked about, how to have a personal relationship with Jesus. I think becoming sick really brought me to my knees and asking God, what is wrong with me? And I remember I was scarfing down a Hostess cupcake and crying and praying, and that was the first time he dealt with what I was eating. Because I never thought I could be sick from what I was eating.
You already knew how to pray.
I knew how to pray, but I never knew how to listen and actually take the time and see what he's saying to me. And I thought, okay, he's dealing with, what I'm eating. And I had the allergy test, and I was allergic to everything, nuts and everything that was even good for you, fruits, meats. So I prayed and I said, God, I can't do this. I don't know what to eat.
So you hadn't had any kind of education on this?
No. And I remember God saying,
you just felt the Lord was leading you, certainly.
He was absolutely leading me. And I remember taking a walk and saying, I can't do this without you. I'm allergic to everything. What do I eat? And I remember him saying, no sugar, no yeast. And
no sugar, no yeast.
And I learned much later,
wow,
sugar and yeast are what fuels fungal infections, which I had that I didn't know I had yet. God was with me in so many ways like this, leading me, prompting me what to eat, what doctors to see. It's just been an amazing journey, and it helped me to learn. I would not change what I went through for anything. And it was hard. I had some dark, lonely roads, but that's where I found God, and I found my understanding of how much he loves me, because most of my life I had felt condemned, guilty. Oh. I knew he loved me.
Well, if you read how her relationship with her dad.
Maybe that has something to do with it. So,
trust me, I'm not a psychologist, but trust me. Hey, if you just joined me, I'm talking to Erin Porter, and you can tell she looks awfully healthy, but she didn't earlier in her life, and she was not healthy. It's been a real combination physical, spiritual journey, and it is all chronicled in here with gorgeous, wonderful looking recipes, and she's on future shows, she's going to do some cooking for us. How did you choose the recipes you put in here?
I would find junk recipes that I love, desserts and cheeseburgers or pizza, and then I would revamp them into something that's healthy for us to eat, and trying to get rid of the sugar and the grains and just changing my ingredients.
So you don't use flour?
I use a certain flour, usually almond flour, coconut flour, arrowroot and tapioca flour.
Okay, what's wrong with the regular flour that we use?
Well,
Because it's
if
wheat?
you're trying to be gluten-free, you want to eliminate wheat flour and regular flour. And also, if you have any kind of leaky gut or systemic fungal infection, which I had, our wheat supply is full of mold. It's the way we store it, as well as peanuts.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
Yeah, there's certain. So you won't find wheat, you won't find peanuts, and you won't find corn. Those are the 3 crops in this country that seem to be full of mold.
See, I know you're telling the truth because I have a beautiful daughter-in-law, and she was dying, really, and it was her food.
Yeah.
Now, very few people could live like she does because of she went to Dr. Perlmutter, who wrote The Grain Brain, and God just orchestrated her getting there. And I don't know how much blood they took out of her, you know, to determine. And she had a cyst on her ovaries. They were watching every 3 months. It disappeared.
Oh, wow.
Her 20/20 vision came back. It was quite amazing. And also, when it comes to the grains, because grains have to be good. You know, they're in the Bible and they ate them.
Mm-hmm.
They've been manipulated.
Yes.
In America.
Exactly. And the way we store it. So not only are they, like you said, they're manipulated and they add
As
a
they
lot
grow.
to it, and preservatives and everything else, the way we store it as well.
Now, how are you at this point? You look wonderful. And
Thank you.
weren't you on Doug Kaufman's show?
I was, yes.
And did you offer recipes there, or what was the
So
purpose?
actually, my recipes follow Doug Kaufman's diet, which is, like I said, well, there's 2 phases. In the first phase, you are eliminating all grains, so even rice and potatoes and beans. And then once you feel like you're getting better, maybe give it a month or 2, then you can graduate to phase 2, which adds in the rice and the sweet potato.
And so kind of this follows that, right?
It does.
Yeah.
So those are all Kaufman-approved diets. And actually, Doug Kaufman wrote the foreword.
Okay,
He
did.
He's a wonderful Christian man.
And we are completely out of time. This is so fascinating. We could keep going on, and Erin has written a very wonderful special book. I hope you'll check on it, and I think you'll find it very good for you. But we're out of time, so please join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.